Hey, I'm Ben Avery, and this is Strangers and Aliens. Strangers and Aliens is a podcast and video series about just the connection between sci-fi and fantasy, faith, and Christianity. And one of the things I like to do on the podcast, and also hope to do a lot more on the YouTube channel, is to do things that I like to consider a word of encouragement from me to you. And sometimes what I call them weak connections, because it's taking these things from the sci-fi and fantasy side and making some applications to the Christian and faith side. And sometimes the connections aren't as strong as maybe they should be, but hopefully the application is strong. While the connection may be weak, hopefully the application is strong. And that's the case today, where I have something I want to do. I want to unbox this right here. This is something that I got a while ago. It was through Eaglemoss, and they were doing a whole subscription service thing where you could subscribe to the different ships of Star Trek. And I saw it on Facebook. I'm pretty sure it was only just $4.95 for this die-cast starship from Star Trek Discovery. Now, the one thing I did like about Star Trek Discovery, as far as the ships went, is the Discovery ship is a cool looking ship, and it's based on designs for the Starship Enterprise from the motion picture Phase 2 era back in the mid 70s, between the original series and all the stuff that happened afterwards, when starting in like 1979 with Star Trek the Motion Picture. But this Enterprise here, when I saw that they were doing this is another thing I really liked about Discovery. Now, say what you want to about Star Trek Discovery, and people out there are definitely saying what they want to about Star Trek Discovery, but I kind of enjoyed the series, and I really enjoyed the Pike episodes. And when the Enterprise showed up, I thought, that is a cool looking ship. It's not the way that the ship was supposed to look in my imagination based on the timeline, but it was a cool looking ship. And the design of the ship, one of the reasons why I really liked it, is because this ship right here, and this is the special Hot Wheels one that they did, that's Enterprise in dry dock from the motion picture. But I love this design for the Enterprise. This is, in my opinion, one of the greatest starship designs of all time. I think it definitely takes all the stuff from the original series, builds on it, just gives it its own personality. And I was so glad then when in Star Trek 4, they get the Enterprise A, and it was this design. I really, really like this design. But they took the design from the original series and they built on it. And you can definitely tell this is from the original series. Taking that idea here is this ship. And so I want to do an unboxing here. I'm going to take it out. And first of all, you have a catalog. And there's that design for There's that design for Discovery that is based on that old design from the 70s of what Enterprise could have looked like. And then here is a booklet that I knew was going to be in here. Now, here's the deal. I got this a year and a half ago, and I've left it in the box because I wanted to do something like this, where I was actually talking about starship design for the Enterprise, and specifically talk about what was in this booklet. Because inside this booklet, you have just different things about the design and the design process that they went through to get this Enterprise from Discovery. And then, by proxy, into Strange New Worlds, that series, which I think is also a fantastic Star Trek series. And when I was thinking about that, I remembered different things that they said when Star Trek The Next Generation was first coming on the scene. And I had, here's the base, by the way, with the numbering. I believe that's the numbering for this ship. But when Star Trek The Next Generation started, I remember getting magazines, and these magazines, here's the stand, these magazines had different articles and interviews and things like that about how they wanted the Enterprise to be recognizable on the screen. They wanted it to be updated. They wanted it to be updated and work for new special effects and things like that. And so they redesigned the whole thing so it could be the Enterprise D, generations away from the original Enterprise. But they wanted to make sure that if you were watching the show and you saw this ship swoop across the screen, you knew you were watching Star Trek. You knew you were seeing a ship that went along with the Enterprise from Star Trek. And here is this Discovery version of it. And if you look at it, again, like I was saying about the refit design, This has the swept back nacelles. I love that. It has still the round nacelles from the original series. I like that too. You have the dome here on the top for the bridge, the saucer section, and then you have the main hull there. And you can fit it right in here, I think. There it is. Ready for space flight right there. It is a beautiful design. I love this design. And they took that philosophy from Gene Roddenberry when they were first developing Star Trek: The Next Generation, and they took that philosophy, obviously, and said, you want to be able to look at this and see that it looks like that original Enterprise. They had to redesign it for different reasons, and one of them was just aesthetically. The old design for the original ship didn't look great compared to, what ships look like now. Although I do still think that original Enterprise is a great design as well, which makes me, this is something I'm never going to do, but I got this model set during COVID, thinking I would put together these 7 models of the Enterprise. But if you look at every single one of them, they all look like they are from the same source. They are all of a kind. They are all of a piece. Here's the original right here. Dome, nacelles, you can tell. This is the NX-01, which is supposed to be like the prototype design that after they did this came this. And here's the refit. And then you've got the Enterprise. I think this is B right here. Yeah. Then C, D, which we're very familiar with because of Star Trek: Next Generation. And then E from the movies when they updated this design to have something that would look much better on the big screen. All of them look like they belong. All of them look like they have the same original source. And this is where we get our weak connection. And that is our original source. I'm unboxing this Enterprise, but I also want to talk about an unboxed Christian identity, your identity and who you are, and how does this work? And so it goes back to the beginning. Genesis chapter 1, verse 26. Then God said, let us make man in our image, according to our likeness. Then he continues in verse 27. So God created man in his own image. He created him in the image of God. He created them male and female. God created us in his image. And that is huge. That's you. You right now, if you're watching this, whether you are a Christ follower or not, God created you in his image. So that's a part of what I want to talk about, being in the image of God. And kind of what does that mean then too when we are followers of Christ? And that makes me turn to Galatians. Galatians chapter 3, verse 27. It says, for those of you who are baptized into Christ have been clothed with Christ. Clothed with Christ. In other words, you are meant to look like him. And what does it mean to be clothed like him? Well, one of the best descriptions is if you turn over to chapter 5, verse 14 says, for the whole law is fulfilled in one statement, love your neighbor as yourself. That's what it looks like to be clothed in Christ. Chapter 5, verses 22 and 23. But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. The law is not against such things. And again, looking at the Enterprise here, looking at what they did when they were doing all these different designs for different enterprises, they all have the same basic look, although they all each also have their own individual traits. And when you're talking about being a follower of Christ, we all have our individual traits, but there's the same basic look, which starts with who Christ was, what he looked like, what he did, following his example. The fruit of the Spirit is one of the, like I said, best lists. Are we ever going to live up to this list? No. Don't get me wrong. We're not going to be perfect. I'm not perfect. You're not perfect. But this is what we should be striving for. Finally, one more thing to consider as you are figuring out what does it mean to be clothed in Christ is his own words. John chapter 13, verses 34 and 35. I give you a new command. Love one another. Just as I have loved you, you are also to love one another. And then this is the important verse. Verse 35 is probably the strongest portion of this weak connection that I'm making. And that is this. By this, everyone will know that you are my disciples if you love one another. They will know you are my disciples if you love one another. And that is how you look like Christ. Just like they took this basic design with the saucer and a neck connecting to the hull, and then you have the nacelles, and this is how this design works here. You look at this on the screen, you know what you are looking at. You may not like it because it's from Star Trek Discovery, although I love it. I've been waiting to get this out of the box and get this onto my desk. I don't know if this is going to go to work with me, if it's going to be on my desk here or maybe on the shelf here, but I've been waiting to get this thing out of the box and do an unboxing like this. But I really wanted to talk about looking like Christ. And so that is my encouragement to you, is to put on that clothing. Clothe yourself with Christ. And when people interact with you, let them know they're talking to someone who follows Christ, not because you tell them, but because they can see it. And I know one of the things I wanted to talk about, and I don't have a lot of time, but it's just, they asked WWJD, and what would he do? Well, he wasn't against throwing over tables and whipping people. Well, you're right. He did do that. But you know what? I always go back and say, I'm not Jesus, and so if I'm going to do that, I need to be really, really careful. That's actually what Jesus wants me to do in that moment. And he's perfect, and he made the right choice then. Us, we need to be a little more careful and make sure that we're erring on the side of love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, gentleness, and self-control, and a little bit less on the whole whips and flipping tables. But that's just a side note. That's just me. My daughters have a thing where it's a recent thing that's kind of the answer to WWJD. They have bracelets that say HWLF, I think is what it is. He would love first, But anyway, I just want to encourage you. You are made in the image of God. And as a follower of Christ, you're wearing him. You are representing him. But remember, you are also not doing it alone. He is with you. He loves you. And as you grow closer to him, you are also going to grow to be more like him. So don't be discouraged when I'm listing these things that are really high ideals to meet. Because he is with you. He loves you. He cares for you. He sees you. He is by your side. And as you turn to him, as you turn your eyes toward him, your heart and your actions will also turn that way. Be encouraged. He loves you. I do too. I don't know you, but I love you. So thank you so much for joining me. And, the All Week Connection videos are a little cheesier. I'm going to go a little more straightforward with these new ones. But whenever you see a variation on the Enterprise, I want you to remember what they did to make that, and remember who you are and what Jesus has done to make you. What Jesus has done to make you his follower, his disciple, and what he wants to do in you. And so, until next time, I want to thank you for spending time with me. Hopefully this is a little bit of encouragement for you. And as you go on your travels, as you are going out into the world, as you are representing Christ, I want to wish you Godspeed.